is his own story. We're going to talk Melbourne Storm. He's an owner, or big owner for that matter, chairman of the Melbourne Storm, but he has a big story, an Australian sporting story, an Australian business story to tell himself. Very humble man. And the Storm chairman comes to the run home with Joel and today the missile, Mr. Matt Tripp. Welcome. How are you, mate?
Thanks for having me, gents. Good to be with you.
Well, let's rip the Band-Aid off here. Let's go away from rugby league for a moment, Matty Tripp. And there's one thing that you and my colleague here, the Missile, have in common. The Missile embarks upon a journey in 2012, the London Olympics, for a gold medal, and he gets beaten by .01. And when I think about that, Matt Tripp, I think about Viewed, a $41 pop for Bart Cummings with the checks, and he's charging down the middle of that beautiful ground where I'll one day be cremated on. And here comes this horse jumping out of the ground. OTI colours, it comes charging down. It's Viewed, it's Bauer, and Bauer to the point where Missile, they're smart, these operators, the camera operators, they just put the camera on the winner, and the camera does not leave the navy blue and yellow with the white sleeves. It stays on Bauer, who's going to be anointed the Melbourne Cup winner. But Matt Tripp, what happened?
That was a big build-up, Joel. But the fact is, we got beat by 100th of a second.
Oh, yuck.
In fact, if you went purely on times, we actually won the race by 100th of a second. They have a little chip in their saddle clubs. And Viewed was this giant horse, probably 5 or 6 hands bigger than Bauer. Bauer was only a little pony. And the fact is, we got beat by the shortest of margins, like an eyelash. And the moral of the story is I should have bought a bigger horse. Because had I done that, we got away with it.
Well, Matty, 100th of a second, that's what you got beat by Missile for a gold medal, wasn't it? 100th of a second.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I feel your pain, Missile, even though I wasn't doing any pre-work in the build-up to it. All I was doing is drinking and watching. So it was still very disheartening. It was one that got away for sure.
Chatting to Matty Tripp, owner, chairman of the Melbourne Storm. How are you feeling, Matty? This is a big week. This is the battle of the Titans. This is John Lennon versus Paul McCartney for the Beatles. This is Elvis versus Michael Jackson. This is huge.
It is. It's kind of the grand final that certainly down our way, we're hoping for. They've probably been the two best sides all year, probably been the two sides of the last few years. And I'm just rapt that we've made it back in one and we get our chance to win one. We've had a great year, not capped off, but last night was pretty amazing with Jahrome winning the Dally M and Bellamy with Coach of the Year and the other boys getting in. So it's an exciting time where there's a convoy of purple heading up the Hume over the next 48 hours, and everyone is really excited. No one more so than me.
Do you remember your first encounter with Jahrome Hughes, this youngster that comes down from the Gold Coast?
I do. He didn't say boo when I first met him. He was pretty quiet and pretty shy, and he still is a little bit. I mean, I see him every second day now, but he's a beautiful bloke. He really is just. He typifies everything that we want to stand for at the club. He's humble. He's hardworking. He puts the team first, and I'm just so happy for him that he got what he deserved. I think he's been the most consistent player in the comp this year, and he was rewarded last night.
Matt, the bookies have it. Storm $1.90, Penrith $1.94. Now, if anybody knows how these bookies work, it's you. Have the traders got it right?
I think it's the best toss of a coin game you'll ever see. I mean, you could make a case for both sides, obviously, and it's the perfect bookmaking game. I think we'll lay both sides and hopefully, which doesn't happen very often, have what we call a green book, where it doesn't matter who wins, you get a small result either way. So in saying that, I don't look at the book when it comes to Melbourne Storm games. I don't want to know if we've laid the Storm. I shut my eyes and put them without any financial impact whatsoever. So I'm going there really hopeful. I think we'll need to be at our absolute best, but I think if the Spine do what they've done over the last few weeks and can click, then I think we'll go a long way towards winning the game.
You once wagered $1 million on Hawthorn in 2008 and won that game. 2-part question. Will you wager similar on the Melbourne Storm this weekend? And what's the biggest amount you've ever punted on?
Oh, God. So, firstly, someone backed Geelong in that 2008 grand final. It wasn't me backing Hawthorn, but fortunately, Hawthorn knocked them off as rank outsiders. I think they were about $4 chances in that grand final in '08, which ironically was the same year as Bauer. In terms of the biggest bet, I've taken a few $1 million bets on the State of Origin over the years, and probably ended up 50-50. Some win, some lose, but they're always kind of toss of the coin games. And there's been a couple of people come in and have $1 million bets on Queensland in game one here and there. But in recent times, no, nothing huge like that. They were many years ago when I had some balls and was willing to take big bets. I've aged a little bit, probably wisened up a little bit.
Matty Tripp, the urban myth, maybe it's not an urban myth, maybe it's fact, but the urban myth goes that as a very youngster, you're a baby at this time and you've gone all in, starting up a betting organisation, and it literally comes down to one race. You must win this race. Is that true or is that false?
It's happened on a few occasions, yeah, where I've had my ass out of my strides, and I've been right at the bottom of the barrel where I've needed certain results to go my way, and fortunately they have, and sometimes they haven't, where I've had to beg, steal, and borrow to stay in play. You'd remember those days, Joel. I used to come and watch you at Leichhardt Oval as a Bellamy fullback, and I was a greyhound bookie working at Wentworth Park back then in the late '90s, and they were tough days, but I've kind of learned through all of that I guess hard work. The harder you work, the luckier you get, and so that's probably a Craig Bellamy saying. Actually, he says that sometimes, and there's not a truer word spoken. He's the sort of coach that he's a do as I do, not as I say kind of coach, and he's as the rumours go, and they're true. He's first into the gym. He works as hard as the players, and they gravitate off that, and they love that. So. That's what I'm hoping that can happen on Sunday night, that all the work they put in over the course of the last 12 months comes to the fore on Sunday.
You know, the funny thing about this missile is that we're in Mudgee this year, and I get a quote from Justin Yeo. Now, Justin Yeo is the father, he's coming on the show tomorrow, of Isaiah Yeo, and he's got a quote which they've got from Bellamy, ironically, which is, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't want to work hard.
Yep.
And that's gone to Penrith. So maybe it's no surprise to see those two great teams there.
Matt, you said you could make a case for either side, or a bookie could make a case for either side. Could you make a case for us right now for the Melbourne Storm and a potential Clive Churchill medal winner?
Well, as I said earlier, I think our four key spine players are really hitting their straps at the right time of year. So I think if they put their best foot forward and play well, then I think they've got a lot of points in them, and they can handle their combinations with our outside backs and put some points on the board. I think, though, the important thing for us, and losing Nelson hasn't helped, I think the game will be won and lost in the forwards, and we all know how good those Penrith forwards are. So our guys are going to at least need to break square with them in order to lay a platform for the guys I just mentioned. So if that can happen, I'd be fairly confident that we can get away with them. In terms of the Clive Churchill, I could rattle off all the obvious players. I think the guy who's the unsung hero, well, he was unsung until last night in our side, has been Eli Katoa. Yeah. I think he plays every minute of every game. He's an out and out star. I wouldn't swap him for anyone. So I think at value, he's probably a smoky. But in terms of X factor, that when the whips are cracking, you need a guy to put his best foot forward and try to put points on the board and be the difference between the two sides. I think Ryan Papenhuyzen has done it before. I think he's starting to hit his straps too, and I think he's the guy that could be the difference in the game. If Cleary and Hughes chop out with each other, if Kenny and Harry chop out with each other, you've got Luai and Munster going toe to toe. I think if Ryan can get the better of Dylan Edwards and win that battle, that'll go a long way towards working out who wins this game.
Missile, many years ago, I came up with the Melbourne Cup files, the sugar files, where almost every year it was winning. There was criteria around it, but the last couple of years it's hit the wall. I may need to go in for the mechanics and get it sorted out. But the Clive Churchill code, which I shared with Brian, 3 key metrics. No centre, winger or benchies ever won it. 24 of the last 26 had already played for their state or country. 23 of the last 26 had been aged between 23 and 27 as a sweet spot. 2 Melbourne Storm players fit it, Harry Grant and that man, Mr. Matt Tripp, referred to Eli Katoa. So they're the two who fit the Sugar Clive Churchill code. Matty, I want to ask you this question because you're a young man who grows up in Victoria and your dad quite influential, of course, in the state of Victoria, and therefore you would have been to every AFL game that you wanted to go to. How does a man who goes through that system get so involved and so in love with a game called rugby league?
Yeah, that's a good question. I still love AFL. I mean, I went to the grand final on the weekend, and I'm passionate about AFL, but I love all sport. So being a bookie, you have to be in tune with most sports, and you have to kind of have your finger on the pulse as to what's going on. And I spent 7 years through the 90s living in Vanuatu, and there was only one channel over there which only showed rugby league. So it was almost forced upon me that the only sport that we could watch with no internet, no mobile phones or anything was a channel called Impaja that we could stream into Vanuatu, and I'd listen to the dulcet tones of Rabs every Friday and every Sunday on the Channel 9 games, and I fell in love with the game then. And then when the opportunity arose to acquire the Melbourne Storm or take them off News Corp's hands back in 2013, I think it was, I grabbed it with both hands, and we haven't looked back since. It's been a fun ride. It's such a great thing for me to take me out of the betting bubble that I'm permanently in and give something back to a club that I'm really passionate about.
Melbourne Storm, the rise and rise of the Melbourne Storm was highlighted last week. Fox Sports up by 420% on their viewership numbers, and Channel 9 up by 361%. So the Melbourne faithful, the fans down there south of the border are getting around the rugby league.
They are. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think back to when I took over the Storm 10 years ago to where they are now. You know, we've got 37,000 members, which is, I think, second only to the Broncos in the NRL. And when you consider, you know, we've got Collingwood 150 metres from us. We've got Richmond, who are 300 or 400 metres from us over the road, and we share the facility at Amy with the Melbourne Demons. We're in enemy territory, and it's not easy to try to swing these rusted on AFL people over to rugby league, but that is happening, and it's happening rapidly. Like we broke all records for attendances at Amy this year, so there really is a groundswell of support starting to get behind the Storm, and I'm really proud, as I said, to play a small part in it and watch it happening before my eyes. It's all credit to the people involved at the club.
Matty Tripp, we're going to let you go. Just before we do, two quick questions. So I kind of feel like, so what happens Missile with the traders, they rate horses, they rate games, they rate teams. I kind of feel like this one, Matty, with the Melbourne Storm taking on Penrith, it's Winks versus Ben Battle, it's Winks versus Hartnell, Happy Clapper. I don't know who Winks is. It is Penrith at this point, but you kind of feel like we've got just two teams who both, in any other time, deserve to be premiers. Do you feel that way?
I do. Yeah, I do. And Penrith have proven that over the last few years. But this is, it's the ultimate heavyweight battle. And it's, who's standing at the end of the final round that'll probably win it, because they'll go pretty hard at each other, and it'll be a genuine Group 1 race. So, as I said, there's no one more excited than me. I think even if you're not a Storm or Penrith fan, I think most rugby league purists would be delighted that these two teams have made it through.
We're very lucky to have Paul Bunn on, your gun recruitment manager, but the big question is Harry Grant. He could have a Clive. He fits the Clive code. Where are we at with him, Matty?
Yeah, look, I've made no secret of the fact that I want Harry to finish his career at the Storm. I want all their great players too, but he's our captain. What he's done this year since he's been made captain has been remarkable on and off the field. So he's a priority of mine. I don't think he's going anywhere, but we've got to work that out over the next few weeks. I think he'll roll through to 26. He's got an option in his favour to play in 26, and I'm pretty confident that will happen. And then what happens beyond that, well, we've got a bit of time to make sure he's a Melbourne player for life.
I wanted to talk about Bob Hawke. I wanted to talk about your dad, but we ran out of time. We've taken up too much in grand final week. But I will ask this. I'll prioritise this because, Matty, as you know, I'm unhealthily obsessed by the Melbourne Cup. There's 26 million people in Australia. I think I waste more time on it than anyone else. Have you got anything for me just yet?
Oh, mate, honestly, I don't. I'd be lying if I said I did. But if you want to get me on a week prior,
perfect.
I'll speak to a couple of better judges than me, and I'll see if I can find you a winner.
Matthew Tripp of the Melbourne Storm, mate, we really appreciate it. The board has smashed up. They love having you on, and all the best to the Mighty Purple on Sunday evening.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Matty Tripp, Chairman of the Melbourne Storm. What a treat that was, Missile.